most hotly disputed question in the world today is, who owns the promised land as it is described in the Bible? The Jewish people claim that God gave it to them. The Arabs claim it was conquered by the Muslims and therefore can never be surrendered. This question is destined to lead the world into the Battle of Armageddon. Today's edition of Politics and Religion.
Look, there are two things I don't discuss: politics and religion.
In my house, we don't talk about.
I'll talk to you about anything except politics and religion.
I never talk about politics and religion.
Politics determines how we'll live here on earth. Religion determines how we'll live forever. I'm Irvin Baxter. I think it's time we talk about it. The world's number one political dispute in all the earth. What is it? It's the argument over whether Israel has a right to have a homeland in the Holy Land. That's the biggest dispute. Now, this dispute's been raging for a long time. Way back in 70 AD, the Romans conquered Jerusalem, destroyed it. Shortly thereafter, they made a law that no Jew could live in Jerusalem, and they banished the Jewish people from the Holy Land. Since that time, for almost 2,000 years, the Jewish people have been sifted through the nations. They have been in exile. Now, it was all done because it was prophesied to be done. It was prophesied to be done because when their Messiah came, they rejected him. It's all in the Scripture. It was also prophesied, however, that their nation would be reborn in these end times. That happened in 1948. So 1,878 years, from 70 AD until 1948, they were banished from their homeland. All of a sudden, we have seen them return to their homeland. Now the battle is raging over who should have a homeland there, what territory belongs to whom, what's it all about. Now, I want to cut to the chase, first of all, today, and I want to read from the Scriptures what the Bible actually says about the Promised Land. Now, this is just one account, but it's simple, it's concise, it's the first time we see the promise. The reason we call it the Promised Land is because God made a promise to Abraham. Listen to what God said. This is way back in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis means beginnings. The word Genesis means beginnings. Genesis chapter 15, verse number 18. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram. He entered into a covenant. God made a covenant. They agreed together. Actually, God just promised of his own volition. Unto thy seed have I given this land. So God gave land to Abraham and to his descendants after him, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land from the river of Egypt in the south to the great river, the river Euphrates in the north. Now that's quite a span of territory. From Egypt all the way up to the Euphrates River. The Euphrates River it runs through Iraq and up through Syria and then into Turkey. So God said, this is your promised land. Other places in Scripture, he outlines the borders with greater definition. But this was the general outline. From the Mediterranean Sea over into part of Jordan, and from the river of Egypt up to the Euphrates River, and there are some other definitions given in other places. But that's the promised land as it has been defined. The Jewish people occupied all this territory during the days of David and Solomon. Not any other time have they fully dwelt in the promised land. When they returned to their land after the Babylonian captivity. They dwelt in part of the land, but not all of the land. So they have not dwelt in most of their promised land because they have not done the will of God fully as they should have. Consequently, they have been banished many times from the promised land. However, when the turn of the century happened back in the 19th to the 20th century, a great phenomenon, actually I shouldn't use the word phenomenon, I should use the word miracle, because it was a miracle straight from God. But here is what actually happened in fact. The Muslim population of the area called Palestine, which was under the Ottoman Empire, as of 1915, this is up to the time of World War I, the Muslim population was 590,000. The Jewish population was 83,000. So 590,000 to 83,000. There was 17,000 others, Christians or whatever they were. The total population of this area was 689,000. Now, from 1915 until today, we have seen a amazing, dramatic, and even miraculous shift. Because with the defeat of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I, all of this control shifted to what was called the British Mandate. Turkey was defeated, Germany was defeated, and all the power switched to the British Mandate. Now remember, these were never nations. In this territory, they didn't have any nationhood for a long, long time. This area was just a big Ottoman territory. It was called the Ottoman Palestine. And everyone living there were called Palestinians, whether they were Jews, whether they were Arabs, or who they were. If that was their homeland, they were called Palestinians because the entire territory was called the Palestinian territory. It seems funny to our ears now that Jews at one time were called Palestinians, but in fact, they were. Well, then, once the war was over, World War I, around 1920, everything shifted, and in 1922, the British Mandate was formed. Now, when the British Mandate was formed, the population was about the same from 1915 to 1922. However, from 1922 to 1945, we have a dramatic shift. The Muslim population went from 590,000 to 1,060,000. So it just about doubled in that time, in the, 23 years. The Jewish population went from 83,000 to 553,000. So it multiplied by around 6 or 7 times. So the Muslim population doubled, the Jewish population multiplied by 6 or 7 times. What was happening during this time? Well, the pressure was coming from Nazi Germany. Anti-Semitism was raising its ugly head. So the Jews were scattering. They were running for their lives. And so consequently, the Jewish population in the territory called Palestine jumped from 83,000 to 553,000. But it didn't stop there. World War II concludes 1945. And between 1945 and 1967, the Muslim population went from 1,060,000 down to 289,000. So it was dropped by 75%. Now, I didn't have time to research whether this was because Transjordan was peeled off or not. But during this same period from 1945, when the Jewish people had 553,000, they went up to 2,383,000. So they multiplied again by about 4 times in that period, 22 years their population jumped dramatically, multiplied by 4 times. Of course, this was the time when the Jewish nation was reborn. This was the time in 1948 when the Arabs made war against the Jews and tried to drive them out. Well, then from 1967 until 2013, the Muslim population in Israel has gone from 289,000 to 1,658,000. The Jewish population has gone from 2,383,000 to 6,042,000. So today, the population in Israel, they have about 1.6 million Arabs, and they have about 6 million, actually 6.2 now, million Jews. That's the equation. Now, all of the pressure is the dispute over this all. You've got a huge movement in the world called BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction. The movement was started by the Palestinians. They are excellent at propaganda. And they have encouraged the world, boycott Israel. If you own stock in any Israeli company, if you own property, whatever you own there, divest yourself of it. If you do business with Israel, stop, sanction the business, starve them out economically. Yet, the Israeli economy is doing better than any other Arab country that I know of. So that's what's going on right now. Worldwide, Europe has decided they will buy no goods from the West Bank area, what they call the occupied territories. Now, later on in our program, in the next segment, I'm actually going to bring to you a press conference held by a Republican presidential candidate Mike Huckabee. This press conference was held in Jerusalem on Wednesday of this week. And they questioned him as to why he went out to Shiloh, which is in the, quote, occupied territories. However, biblically, it's the area of Samaria and Judea. So you're going to hear some really interesting exchanges. President Obama says Israel should not build a thing out there in the West Bank. Even President George W. Bush said that settlements should not be built. The U.S. government has even stood against them building settlements out there. Nevertheless, Mike Huckabee is taking a very strong stance that Israel should be able to build, that this is her promised land. Now, Mike Huckabee is taking a proper stance, a biblical stance. Of course, that's probably because he knows his Bible. He is formerly a Baptist minister, more recently talk show host, and formerly governor of Arkansas, and now then presidential candidate. So in the next segment of our program, you're going to actually hear some excerpts from the press conference, because I want you to see how this dispute is raging. And I'm hoping we can, the questions are not nearly as loud as Governor Huckabee's answers, but I'm hoping that we can make the question volume strong enough so you can hear the question. If not, I will help you with that. Nevertheless, I want you to hear what's going on, because the struggle in Israel is actually becoming a part of the presidential campaign in the United States of America. So that's where we are right now. Let's recap. What has happened? Well, let me tell you what. I hear we're against a break, so let's just pause right there. When we come back, we're going to take a moment to describe how power has transitioned in the Holy Land over the last 100 years. And then we're going to see what Governor Mike Huckabee has to say about it all. So stay right with us.
One day I was listening to Politics and Religion, much like you are now, when a commercial came on about the Salvation Package. It's a set of 4 DVDs in which Irvin teaches about topics like Nicodemus' question to Jesus, "What must I do to be born again?" I remember Irvin said in the commercial, "If you don't love the truth, don't get this because it will make you mad." Well, I was hungry for the truth, so I did get it, and I am so glad I did. I'd been studying the Bible for many years, but learned there was more in the scriptures about what it means to be born again. When the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" Jesus said, "Take heed of false teaching, for many will come in my name and deceive many." Now I know what Jesus was talking about when he made that statement, and I won't be deceived. The salvation package changed my life and my eternity. I'm so thankful for that commercial I heard just a few years ago. That's why today I wanted to record one too, for someone out there listening, searching for the truth. You will find it in the salvation package. Get the 4 DVD set for $65 or the individual DVDs for $20 each.
Now, before we go to Governor Mike Huckabee's interview in Jerusalem on Wednesday, I want to remind you what has happened. There's so much propaganda. The media so many times just repeats something over and over and over and over until we all assume it's true. They repeat such things as occupied territories. Well, that is an improper statement because it sends the message that Israel occupied the territories from the Palestinians during the 1967 war. Not a word of truth in that. Now, let me make sure you understand. Continually, the media says it's the occupied territories, the occupied territories. But Israel did not occupy the territories from the Palestinians in the 1967 war. So let's back up and see what really did happen. I'm just going to recap quickly. After the Ottoman Empire was defeated in World War I, the control of this territory transferred over to the British. It was called the British Mandate. It actually took effect in 1922. Britain was charged with managing this part of the world. There was no Israel. There was no Transjordan, today called Jordan. None of that existed. It was just one huge territory in the Ottoman Empire. Okay. So what happened was in 1917, the Jewish people were desperate to have a homeland. They were so tired of the escalating anti-Semitism and of having no place to call their own. So consequently, they petitioned the British government, which was the most dominant power on earth at the time, to begin to work toward a homeland in the Promised Land, in the area of Palestine. So the British government issued a declaration in 1917 called the Balfour Declaration. It was named that because the Secretary of State at the time of Great Britain was Lord Balfour. And he simply stated that the British cabinet had voted that they would look favorably upon establishing a Jewish homeland in the British Mandate, in the territory called the Palestinian territories. Well, between 1917, when that was issued, and then finally World War II came along, the horrible the Nazi Holocaust occurred under Adolf Hitler. 6 million Jews were marched off to the concentration camps, to the gas chambers, and ultimately to the crematoriums. Well, all this, the Jews were pushing, pressuring, driving to get back to Israel. But in the meantime, they were caught, they were trapped, and 6 million, 1/3 of the Jewish population was destroyed at that time. Okay, so World War II is now over. And 1947, 2 years after the conclusion of World War II, the United Nations came together to vote. Now remember, the United Nations was only 2 years old at this time. They'd just been formed in 1945 at the conclusion of World War II. So the UN came together and they voted to create a Jewish homeland in the Palestinian territory and an Arab homeland, so that the Arabs living in this territory, and by this time, when you're talking about 1945, you've got about 1 million Arabs and about 553,000 Jews. By 47, it was, I think there were 600,000 Jews by then, and somewhere around 1 million Arabs. So they took this vote that they would partition the land. They created an Israeli state, or they didn't call it Israel, it was just a Jewish state, and they created an Arab state. Well, the Jewish people were so happy to have a homeland after 2,000 years of wandering that they accepted, even though it was not nearly their promised land according to biblical definition, but yet they were just happy to have any place to call home, so they accepted. Well, the Arabs rejected in no uncertain terms. This all happened on November the 29th of 1947. They rejected. Well, things festered, and finally the British said, we're leaving now. We're tired of dealing with all this conflict. We are going to pull out our forces on May the 14th of 1948. Well, this forced Israel to act. So Israel, that same day, May 14th of 1948, declared its independence and accepted the statehood as it was defined by the United Nations. However, the Arabs had rejected this non-binding resolution. They didn't want a state. They wanted it all, and they wanted to destroy Israel. So May 14th of 1948, Israel declared its independence. The very next day, 7 Arab countries attacked Israel. One of the main attackers was Jordan. Jordan came across the Jordan River. By then, the state of Jordan had been created by the British to create a homeland for the Palestinians or for the Arabs. That was to be their Middle East territory. So they came pouring across the Jordan River, and they fought against the newborn Jewish state. Well, the Jewish state, 600,000 Jews against 42 million Arabs, they fought for their lives, and God intervened for them. And they not only survived, but they actually expanded their territories slightly. So when the dust cleared and when the ceasefire was declared, Israel controlled half of Jerusalem, what's called West Jerusalem, and Jordan controlled East Jerusalem and all the way to the Jordan River, the territory that became known as the West Bank. So now Jordan is the occupier, not the Palestinians. There were no Palestinians, except the general term that belonged to Jews and Arabs. But as far as there being a nation called Palestinians or a people called Palestinians, didn't exist. So now then Jordan is occupying the entire West Bank, the biblical area called Judea and Samaria, Judea in the south, Samaria in the north. Well, this ceasefire line held, but the United Nations, when they adopted the resolution that this was to be the ceasefire, specifically said this should not be interpreted as the final border of Israel. That is to be determined later by negotiation. Well, for 19 years, Jordan occupied this territory. Jerusalem was split between the Jews and the Arabs. West Jerusalem was Jewish, East Jerusalem was Arab. Well, then, by 1967, Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was the head of Egypt, felt like he was strong enough to attack Israel and to destroy the nation of Israel. He made military alliances with Syria and with Jordan, and they began to plan their attack. It was in the latter part of May that Nasser actually told the United Nations armies to leave because the UN had occupying forces between Egypt and Israel to keep the peace. He ordered them out, so they left. And then he also closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping. Those were international waters. And he began to make very belligerent speeches against Israel. Well, the handwriting was on the wall. Israel knew it. So Israel on June the 5th decided she's not going to sit and be just a sitting duck, that she's going to take the initiative. Her planes flew over the Mediterranean Sea 500 feet high to avoid radar detection. They caught the Egyptian planes on the ground and destroyed 90% of the Egyptian Air Force before they could even start their engines. Well, quickly, the war escalated. Jordan then, well, I shouldn't leave this out. The Prime Minister of Israel sent a message to King Hussein of Jordan saying, if you will stay out of the war, we have nothing against you, we will not attack you. However, King Hussein of Jordan just could not stay out while his Arab brethren were fighting against the Zionist entity, and furthermore, he had signed a military pact with Egypt. So they attacked Israel in Jerusalem. Well, Israel counterattacked and drove Jordan all the way to the Jordan River. So the occupier who had been occupying this territory, it was the British land mandate, then Jordan occupied it for 19 years, and now Israel drives them out of the biblical promised land called Judea, Samaria. There was nobody there to say who the land belonged to because it didn't belong to anybody. He was under the British mandate. The British mandate had left, and now they drive all the way to the Jordan River. It was obvious that God had brought the Jewish people into their promised land. The Jewish people then moved to annex East Jerusalem to West Jerusalem, saying this is our eternal undivided capital, but they didn't have the faith to annex the entire promised land that God had brought them into. If they had done it then, none of these problems would exist for the Jewish people today. They would have utterly driven them out, and everything would be fine. There would be a Palestinian state in Jordan, which was what it was intended to be. There are many Arab countries. You've got Lebanon, Syria, you've got Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, you've got all these countries, Egypt, all Arab. They've got landmass is humongous, and Israel's like a postage stamp, and yet the Arabs keep saying, oh no, you can't have that inch of land, you cannot have this inch of land. So that's what the whole conflict has been over. So let me go over it one more time. So the British Mandate 1922, Israel was created by UN vote in 1947, attacked in 1948, ceasefire in 1949, Jordan occupied from 1949 until 1967 the area of Judea, Samaria. Jordan had no business being there. They had come over to try to annihilate the nation of Israel. And then Egypt starts the war of 1967. Jordan and Syria participated. In 6 days, Israel won the war, sweeping all the way to the Jordan River, sweeping all the way down through the Sinai Desert, taking the Golan Heights. The world was gasping for its breath. It could not believe the incredible victory. And most people around the world understood that it was the favor of God restoring the Jewish people to their homeland. Well, that's where things have stood since that time. Now, Israel did conclude a peace treaty with Egypt, giving them every inch back that they captured down in the Sinai. Israel signed a peace treaty with Jordan, establishing the border where Jordan's border was before, along the Jordan River. There's been no peace treaty with Syria, but at the same time, the border has been basically quiet for a long, long time. So that's the way things have been during this time period. However, the Palestinians come along. They decide they're going to create a Palestinian people, ultimately try to create a Palestinian state with the goal. Their stated goal in their charter was the annihilation of the nation of Israel and to drive Israel out of the Middle East. That was in the PLO charter. That is in Hamas's charter to this very day. Well, Israel wants to live in peace, and so they've tried to negotiate peace, but always the price is higher than Israel feels she can pay and continue to have secure borders. Because they insist, the Palestinians insist, that Israel goes back to the 67 borders where Israel was 9 miles wide at the waist, where she was so vulnerable, and that's the reason the Arabs had the nerve to attack her, because it was a very indefensible position. So when the United Nations passed the resolution after the 67 war, stating that peace should be made, that Israel should trade land for peace, and that the two parties should negotiate the borders so that Israel could live in security and the Palestinians could have their own homeland. The UN mandate did not say that Israel should withdraw to 67 borders. It said that they should negotiate defensible borders so that all parties could live in peace. That's where the stalemate is. That's where we live today. We'll be back.
In a world where our culture is traveling down a road of spiritual mediocrity, do you want to be one of the few who travel the road of spiritual maturity? Then I recommend Endtime University. This 6-semester course will guide you through understanding the Bible, keys to spiritual growth, life and teachings of Jesus Christ, and Satan defeated, sonship restored. Watch the lessons at your own pace using the structured outlines. Use the quizzes and answers to test your comprehension. Receive a completion certificate when you finish each semester, and a diploma from Endtime University once you've completed all 6 semesters. Matthew 7:13 through 14 says, "Enter in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many will go in. Because strait is the gate and narrow is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." Endtime University will help you walk the straight and narrow path to spiritual maturity. Call 1-800-ENDTIME and ask about Endtime University today.
Attention Livingston, McLeod, and Princeton, Texas. Irvin Baxter's coming to your area for an end-time conference. He will be speaking on subjects such as the Great Tribulation, Sign of the Four Blood Moons, and America's God-given destiny. End-time conferences are a great opportunity to meet Irvin and hear the latest events going on in Bible prophecy. Shop end-time product and meet other people like you who are wanting to learn the prophecies of the Bible. Every time I go to an end-time conference, I feel so energized, like one of the people that can be strong and do exploits, as Daniel 11:32 says. Go to endtime.com and under events, click the conference link or call 1-800-ENDTIME to find out more details about these conferences. We'll see you there.
By the way, don't forget, one of the most popular editions of End Time Magazine ever, ISIS in Bible Prophecy. You need to read this article. If you're not a subscriber, don't wait. Pick up the phone now. Call us 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 because you will want to read this magazine, and you need to be a subscriber to End Time Magazine. I mean, we're in the end time right now. If you're going to subscribe to one magazine, what should it be? End Time Magazine. If you're not going to subscribe to one magazine, you should still subscribe to End Time Magazine. And you, by the way, can get it either the hard copy or you can get it electronically. So pick up the phone, give us a call. The number to call, 1-800-END-TIME. Be a subscriber today. Now, I want to get right back to our subject because I'm now going to bring to you in just one moment the interview, and we're bringing a couple of excerpts from this interview. Now, let me lay the groundwork here. Mike Huckabee has visited Israel some 40 times or so over the last many years, a very frequent visitor to Israel. He's not just there on a political stunt. This particular time, he was invited to Israel because there's a major business person there that wanted to launch a fundraiser for Governor Huckabee's campaign. And the fundraiser was chosen, the site was chosen by this sponsor, and the site he chose is Shiloh. Well, this is very offensive to the Palestinians because they believe that's their territory. And then, on the other hand, many liberal Jews believe that they should not be out there in the West Bank, that they're on Palestinian territories. Well, the truth of the matter is, those liberal Jews are the ones who don't believe the Bible. About 50% of Israel tends to be atheistic anyway, so there's no biblical basis as far as they're concerned. But then there are other parts of Israel who believe patiently that that is their promised land. Okay, so now we're going to the interview, and you're going to hear one of the journalists there, I think it's CBS, ABC, or one of those, I think she may actually identify herself, begin to ask question concerning Governor Huckabee about his feelings and why in the world he would be out there in these territories that are so disputed. Listen to it.
Yes.
Molly Hunter from ABC News. Can you talk a little bit about yesterday's fundraiser and why you chose to go to a settlement, to the Visitor Center settlement, an area, of course, that international law considers occupied territory, as opposed to fundraising among American Jews and Israelis in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, where there are many?
Well, first of all, the event was hosted by an individual who chose to have it at that location. I was not in the least hesitant to go to Shiloh, in part because 3,500 years ago, it was the capital of Israel. It was the seat of the tabernacle. It is a place of great connection in history to the Jewish people. The fact that it is in Samaria is immaterial to me because I would happily go to Shiloh at any time. And I've been throughout the region of both Judea and Samaria. I think it's very important that as Americans we show our support for the Israelis and their capacity to build their neighborhoods in their own country. And I have been doing that. This is not something new for me. It's been this way for as long as I can remember, since my early trips to Israel, the first of which was 42 years ago, back in 1973. Exactly 42 years and 1 month ago, to be exact. So I would dispute. One is West Bank. I call these Judea and Samaria. The second term is occupied. I don't see it as occupied. That makes it appear as if someone is illegally taking land. I don't see it that way. And the third thing is the very use of the term illegal. Again, I point back that Israel has more of a connection to lands in Judea and Samaria, specifically Shiloh, where I was last night. 3,500 years of connection to that very piece of property. I mean, it would be very easy for me to say that in America we have about a 400-year relationship to Manhattan. It would be if I came and said, I think we need to end our occupation of Manhattan. I'm pretty sure that most Americans would find that laughable because they'd like, we've got an incredible connection here. I think the Israelis have a strong connection to land in Judea and Samaria.
Well, very interesting, his comparison to Israel's 3,500-year history in Shiloh and also in the West Bank, in Judea, Samaria, and our presence in Manhattan, which of course is in New York City. He said we've been there 400 years or so, and I'm not even sure we've been there that long. Nevertheless, that's our history goes back that long, yet we would be absolutely, it would be absurd for anyone to suggest that we need to leave there, even though I'm sure there are some people that would go that far. Nevertheless, interesting point. Now, the next clip that I want you to hear, Governor Huckabee is asked about a statement he made that the signing of the Iranian agreement, the Iranian nuclear agreement, was like taking Jews by the hand and leading them to the doors of the ovens. Now, he made this statement a few weeks ago. It created an incredible furor. President Obama was just incredulous, and he was just amazed that he would make such a statement. And yet, Governor Huckabee didn't back down. He said, my statement is correct. I do not regret whatsoever. And he's getting ready to be asked about this statement that he made. And I want you to listen. The journalist asked the question. He's going to give his reply.
Yes.
Israeli officials, yesterday mentioned that you have received support for your comments, the controversial comments about Obama pushing Jews or Israel into the oven. Israeli officials have said that these comments were inappropriate and that Israel today can defend itself by itself.
Sure.
Do you agree?
Israel most certainly can defend itself. That wasn't the point I was making. My point was not could they defend themselves, but would someone attack them? Would someone attempt to annihilate them? I have to take the Iranians at their word. I mean, those are not my words. Those are the Iranians. The Iranians said, exact quote, "We have developed the missile systems that can deliver the Holocaust to Israel." Exact quote. I didn't make that up. The Iranians did.
Wow. Powerful statement. We have come up with the delivery system that can deliver the Holocaust to Israel. And by the way, in that agreement, there is no control over their development of intercontinental ballistic missiles that would have the ability to deliver nuclear weapons to Israel. Now, back to a biblical basis here. I'm not really dealing in politics here today. Back to a biblical basis. The Bible prophesies that Iran is going to invade Israel soon. Now, it's at least 7 years away. maybe 8, 9, or 10 years away. We don't know the exact years. We know there's a 7-year period that must take place. It's at the end of that 7-year period that Iran is going to invade Israel, allied with Russia. Guess who's allied with Russia today? Iran is allied with Russia today. We just sent 6 bombers into the Incirlik Air Force Base belonging to Turkey, just off of the city of Aleppo and just off of the town of Dabiq. We just put those in there within the last 2 weeks. And Putin now has announced that he's putting 6 equal fighters into the area to counteract, in Syria, to counteract what the United States has put there. Putin does not intend for us to bring Assad down. He is committed to Assad. Iran is committed to Assad. Well, they're going to end up coming down together against Israel at the Battle of Armageddon. And notice the one journalist said, but the whole world is against the Jewish people being out in the West Bank. And if you're elected president, won't you find yourself standing alone? And Governor Huckabee corrected, saying, no, it's not if I'm elected president, it's when. Well, I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. Nevertheless, she said, if you're elected president, you're going to be standing all alone. And Governor Huckabee said, well, that won't be new to me. I've had to stand alone before. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had a president that would take this kind of an unequivocal stance for the nation of Israel, for the promised land? Now, I'm not telling you that you should vote for Mike Huckabee. I don't know that. However, it's interesting that he is willing in this presidential campaign to take such an unequivocal stance for the people of Israel. That's the way every single presidential candidate should be. I believe America has a destiny to stand with Israel. By the way, we are going to take your phone calls now. I know I've taken up quite a bit of time here, but I thought this material was so critical for us to see, and I want you to understand that right in the middle of this presidential campaign, this battle is raging right now. So we are going to go to the phones. Let me see. I don't want to do it right now because we're only a minute away. Let me talk to you for a moment. We're leaving for Israel on November the 12th. We'll be going for 12 days, 12th through the 23rd of November. If you would like to go, we've got about a month left or so to sign up. So please don't wait. It's filling up fast. We're receiving wonderful enthusiasm about this trip, and I'm looking forward to it as well. So consequently, please, if you're interested and you'd like to go with us to Israel, don't wait too late. We've had people that waited too late and they were very disappointed. So there's no use to wait. Make your decision. Pick up the phone and call us, 1-800-ENDTIME. Ask to speak to someone about the tour, and we will assist you. We'll tell you all the information you need. People ask me, is it safe? We're hearing all kinds of things about conflicts, people throwing rocks on the Temple Mount. It happens once a week maybe, and it's always Arabs against Jews. It's never tour groups that are involved, and we have always found it to be perfectly safe in Israel. We do not know of one fatality out of 50 million tourists in the last 30 years. We've never heard of one fatality in an organized tour group. Now, if you decide you're going to go hiking down into Gaza, or you're going to go into Hebron, well, we're not going to allow you to do that if you're on our tour, because it would not be a wise thing to do. You'll be perfectly safe. If you want to go with us, give us a call. The number to call is 1-800-ENDTIME. You will stand on the Mount of Olives where Jesus is getting ready to return to. You will stand in the area where the Battle of Armageddon will culminate. You will experience the prophecies of the Bible. I want to introduce you today to what I call the Armageddon Hospital. It was October of 2010. The headline, Israel builds world's largest underground hospital, immediately arrested my attention. When I read that it was being built in Haifa, Israel, I fully understood the implications of this announcement. Haifa is located at the western end of the plain of Megiddo, the prophesied site of the Battle of Armageddon. Would the world's largest underground hospital, specifically designed for use in time of war, actually become the hospital to which the wounded of the Battle of Armageddon would be brought? It was obvious to me that the answer to this question was undoubtedly yes.
Go to endtime.com and under Irvin's Thoughts, click the Rambam link to watch the video.
I grew up in church, and like most kids, I learned the 10 Commandments. But the 4th commandment bothered me through the years. What does it mean to keep the Sabbath? Am I supposed to keep it like they did in the Old Testament? That's why I was glad to hear Irvin come out with the new DVD, To Sabbath or Not to Sabbath. Like most end-time videos, I was enlightened to see what had been in the Bible all along, but didn't know it was there. He laid out the scriptures in an easy-to-follow lesson, and now I don't have to worry anymore. I know how to keep the Sabbath. Get your copy today.
All right, we're going to the phones now. The number to call to be on the air with me, 877 Endtime. Let's go to Ohio. Sharon is calling. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, Irvin. I have an app on my phone that's called Behold Israel. And on the 18th, a couple of days ago, there was a news report that said Russia to complete sale of S-300 defense missile system with Iran by next week. So I guess my questions are, wasn't the money that Iran was going to purchase those come from list sanction if and when the Iranian deal got approved? And the second question would be, who makes up the UN that voted for that, unanimously voted? Are they specific people or countries, and do they really think that's a good idea, or are they moving towards a totally different goal and just using that? And I'll take my answer off air.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. Two good questions. First of all, the United Nations Security Council voted, and once this deal was negotiated by the P5+1, P5 is your 5 Security Council members, permanent members, that have veto power. There are a total of 15 members that make up the UN Security Council. 5 permanent members, 10 rotating members. The 10 rotating members have a vote, but they do not have veto power. So if something passes by 2/3, then it's considered passed, as long as one of the 5 veto power wielding members do not vote against it. If one of those 5 votes against it, it's dead. The 5 with veto power are the United States, Russia, France, Great Britain, China. Those are the big 5. Now, the P5+1 is Germany. Germany has become so powerful, she cannot be ignored. She does not have a seat on the UN Security Council at this particular time. Nevertheless, Germany is the dominant force in the European Union, and the European Union has 550 million people with 28 nations that have now become states of the European Union. So Germany is very, very powerful. It's the dominant force in the European Union. Those are the ones who voted unanimously to accept this agreement. Now, as far as the sale of missiles to Iran, I don't think that sale was dependent upon the sanctions being relieved. That I think that Iran was always wanting those missiles. However, Russia drug her feet, but the signing of this agreement opened the door for Iran, for Russia to resume commerce and all the other nations to resume commerce with Iran. I just read today that the United Kingdom is opening their embassy next week in Iran. All of the nations of the world are rushing now for that to happen. So consequently, they are now selling this anti-missile defense system, which they planned to do all along because the sanctions are off. They weren't supposed to sell military equipment to Iran until this agreement was signed. Now then, it's no holds barred, and that's what's happened there. Okay, let's go quickly now to Raphael from right here in Texas. Hello, Raphael.
I'm calling regarding your last caller yesterday that believes that Jesus is not coming back physically. And John chapter 14 is very clear and easy to understand. In verse 2 and 3, he tells us that he's going to prepare a place for us, and then he'll come back and take us with him. Verse 25 tells us that he's going to leave the council behind to teach us all the things and remind us of everything. And on 28, verse 28, it again repeats that he is coming, he's going away and he's coming back for us. I'll take your comments off the phone. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, thank you, Raphael. Of course, I agree with you completely, and I've made no secret of that, that people who teach that there's not going to be a second coming. Remember in 2 Thessalonians chapter number 2, there were people who were teaching that the second coming was imminent. And the Apostle Paul wrote to the Thessalonican church to correct that error. He said, I beseech you, brethren, by the coming of the Lord and our gathering together unto him. Now, these were people who were already filled with the Holy Ghost. So this was not speaking of a spiritual gathering together. But I beseech you, by the coming of the Lord and our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as though the day of Christ is at hand. That day, the day of our gathering together unto him, shall not come, except two things happen. There come a falling away first, the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who sits in the temple of God claiming to be God. Now, the Apostle Paul was explaining events that would happen before the second coming of Jesus Christ when we will be gathered together unto him. So consequently, it's so important that we not go down those roads. And of course, I made no bones about it. I do not agree with that doctrine at all. The Bible tells us that there are people coming that would say that the coming of Christ is past already. And the Bible says from such turn away. Okay, back to the phones. Janice is calling from Arkansas. Hello, Janice.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, Janice. Thank you.
Okay, I heard this other pastor that comes on right before you do the other day, and he said in Matthew where it talks about the fig tree,
yes,
that the people in Israel were getting saved, and they started getting saved abundantly. Jesus could return at that time. That we didn't have to wait for Daniel 9:27 to be fulfilled. I'm wanting to know, is that true? Because I'm watching that specific prophecy and Temple Mount.
Yeah, it's not true. The Bible's very clear that the day of the coming of the Lord will not come, and I already just quoted the scripture, until there come a falling away first and the man of sin be revealed. That's the revelation of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to be revealed halfway through the final 7 years when he stands on the Temple Mount claiming to be Messiah and God. That's when he is revealed. There will be 3.5 years after that called the Great Tribulation, and we will be here all during that time. And then Jesus said in Matthew 24, the very passage you're quoting from, just before he talked about the fig tree, Jesus said in verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, will the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars will fall from heaven, then he shall send his angels to gather his elect. So the Bible says very clearly it will be immediately after the tribulation. He goes on to say, and in that day 2 will be in the field, 1 shall be taken, the other shall be left. 2 will be grinding at the mill, the 1 shall be taken, the other shall be left. All of those commentaries are about the rapture that will happen immediately after the tribulation. And then a lot of people concerning the fig tree, Jesus right then in verse 32 said, now hear the parable of the fig tree. The tree puts forth its buds, and you know that summer is nigh. You see the buds on the tree, you know that we're close to summertime. He said, likewise, when you see all these things, he's talking about the prophecies he's given us in the 24th chapter of Matthew. When you see all these things, then know that this generation shall not pass. What generation? The generation that sees these things. Then know that this generation shall not pass until everything is fulfilled.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I've had a lot of people tell me that we're not going to be here for the tribulation, that he was going to take us, rapture us out of here before that. But I was like, no, because there's going to be people turning to him, because he's pouring his Spirit out as of today.
Yes, and
I believe he's pouring his Spirit out all over the world.
yes, and we're going to have the greatest revival just ahead of us the world's ever seen. Now, there is going to be a time of great tribulation, and it will be worse in some parts of the world than in other parts of the world. The Bible is very clear on that point. But if the church is doing what it should do, we will be having the greatest revival as these prophecies converge. When I step to this microphone and I announce that the final 7 years just began, when I announce that the agreement has been signed and we have 7 years left until the second coming of Jesus Christ, we're going to be able to do that. God put that prophecy in Scripture so that we could do it. It is going to produce a heightened level of awareness about the end time more than we've ever seen before. During the first 3.5 years, they're going to build the Jewish temple. That's going to heighten scriptural awareness higher than ever before. People are going to be turning to Jesus Christ. People are also going to be turning to the Antichrist. There's going to be two mighty forces taking place. The people who don't love the truth, who love darkness, who want to do what they want to do, they're going to be turning en masse to the Antichrist. But to those people who love God, they're going to be turning to Jesus Christ. It'll be the best of times. It'll be the worst of times. Thank you very much, Janice. We're out of time. Got to let you go.
Hey, thank you. God bless you.
God bless
Bye.
you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's really heavy on my heart right now that we are racing the rapture. The United States of America has put planes into the Incirlik Air Force Base belonging to Turkey, about 5 miles from Dabiq, where the Muslims say the final battle is going to happen. Well, the final battle is not going to happen there. It's going to happen in the plain of Megiddo, and it's going to culminate at the gates of Jerusalem. But there is a battle coming. The Bible teaches in Revelation 9:13 through 16, there is a war coming that will be horrific. It'll kill 1/3 of mankind. Now, the Muslims think that war is going to start in the area of Dabiq. We just made the decision in the last 2 or 3 weeks to move our troops into there. I don't know whether this is going to be the trigger of it or not. All I'm telling you is we are living in the end time now. Please, if you have not yet, become a member. Join hands with us, because we're going to move this world before it's over with the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you'd like to be a partner with us, call us. 800 End Time is the number to call.
Politics and Religion is a production of Endtime Ministries. It is a daily 1-hour broadcast dedicated to bringing you the prophetic fulfillments happening on a daily basis.
If you would like to listen to archive shows, subscribe to End Time Magazine, find a prophecy conference in your area, order End Time resources, watch our TV show, or subscribe to our free weekly e-news, call 1-800-END-TIME or go to endtime.com and take advantage of what our site has to offer.
Connect to Endtime Ministries by partnering with us and help this message make a global impact.
Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to all of our loyal partners, listeners, and friends for helping make Politics and Religion and Endtime Ministries possible.